Hello, my name is Diana Restrepo, and I will be sharing with you 3 different activities that could be used for high school students or middle school students. They are all linked to a certain extent, but you can definitely use them separately if that works better with the type of material and the type of topics that you are using in your classroom. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can walk you through the materials that I have put together here. So this first lesson plan relates to nutrient runoff, and it is an experiment setup. You could call it like that. Everything has been explained in this introduction, and it shows the appropriate standards. I am located in Kansas, and so you will see that a lot of this material is tied to what happens here in the grasslands, specifically in Kansas. Some of the indicators, the materials that you're going to be using. I will say that there are quite a number of materials to use for this specific experiment. And so I would suggest creating groups of maybe 4 or 5 students so that they can all work within one station. You will be using pieces of sod to basically demonstrate how runoff works, how much water can be absorbed by the grass pad, and how does fertilizer run off if it's not applied properly. And so all of those details are going to be outlined in this lesson plan. Each one of those steps are going to be outlined here and some of the references that I used. I've also put together a very simple PowerPoint presentation that you can modify however you need to, but really just kind of walking through each one of those steps. This could work as an introductory presentation that you give to your students to go over the main concept so that they understand, what is it that they're doing and creating connections between the different steps in the experiment. We have introduction, types of pollution, stormwater runoff, and what are the impacts, the role of nitrogen and phosphorus, the danger of excessive nutrients coming into our water bodies. How can we reduce pollution from fertilizers? And also, since we're talking about multi-species grazing and also prescribed fire, I wanted to link this with multi-species grazing and the fact that nutrients also comes from the manure of the livestock. And so also trying to bring up that point so that students can start thinking about, okay, well, does distance matter? What happens in between, right? Talking about maybe some of these best management practices, implementing riparian areas, maybe some wetlands to prevent a lot of these nutrients from going into our water bodies, and that sort of thing. All of those ideas will be outlined here in this PowerPoint presentation as well. These are just basic points that I've put in here. You're welcome to put pictures in there. I didn't have the time to do that, but students are always drawn to pictures and how and maybe possibly diagrams that connect some of these processes together, maybe precipitation and how it flows downstream. What is the role of how steep the landscape is? How does the concept of watershed play in this type of activities, right? Understanding that water flows from the higher elevations in a watershed to lower elevations of a watershed, coming into a common point that typically is used for water resources or as a water source for different things, including recreation, including drinking water sources. So that's why it's so important to prevent pollution of our streams and rivers, which eventually makes it into a water source that we are all using. So we're all part of that watershed, and whatever we do makes a difference. This activity is the base for the following portion. Like I said, you can work with this together or use them separately. I am really just, providing some building blocks, and you're welcome to use them however if it's better for you. This other activity has to do with multi-species grazing. And so my thinking behind this is that we already have the setup where we have the sod, and we're going to be putting that on painting pan, which is typically raised. And so that will give us a little bit of elevation, since we already have that setup for the initial experiment that I just showed you at the beginning. We can play around with that, right? We know that there are variations on how livestock prefers to feed and what types of vegetation they like, and also, what elevation they prefer. And so let's see if I can get to what's behind this here. So let me get to the stuff behind. There we go. And so what I wanted to show you was this document, this resource that I'm including here. It's called the grazing condition cards, but you can use it, like I said, however you want to. I was envisioning maybe some playing cards where you can have all of these different variables, including, and I'm gonna scroll down here for the list of variables that I came up with. So livestock availability, depending on, of course, your financial resources, the rancher's financial resources, and even playing around with historical record of what type of livestock was present and available in the Great Plains way back in the day. And so we have cattle, sheep, goats, and we have some specific times when some of this livestock was available in the different states. We also have selection for plant parts. So some of the livestock is more selective, so they will like to eat more of the leaves, the blades, and the buds rather than other parts of the plant. And other livestock types have lower selectivity, and so they will eat the whole entire plant, for example. In terms of what I was talking about in terms of elevation, we'll have flat, moderate, and steep elevation. And so you can play around with that too. And plant preferences, either grass, shrubs, and trees, which is browse, and then broadleaves, which are considered forbs, as well as the seasons, right? Spring, summer, fall, and winter. And really the goal here is to combine a number of these different variables to play around with the resources that we have. So if we already have the setup for the experiment, setting up a number of different scenarios for students and asking them, well, if I have this elevation with this type of vegetation, what kind of livestock will come to feed there, for example. You can also include patch burn, what's it called? Yeah, prescribed burning or patch burn practices. And, introducing that concept of, okay, well, a lot of these livestock species really like it when this type of vegetation is growing in a certain place after a burn. And so those type of concepts can be introduced with this activity as well. I provide an example of a specific scenario where, again, combining some of these variables, you can come up with different things. I also included, and sorry, I'm scrolling so fast, but I wanted to go through some of these resources that I'm including here. So, for example, this specific graph here, it has so much information in there, and I really wanted to take advantage of everything that is outlined here. to create an activity. And so just looking at this, you can also take advantage of the fact that this is a great graph with lots of drawings and lots of information in it. And it can also work as a piece that could be interpreted by students, right? I know that one of the things that need to be reinforced, specifically for high school students and even better for middle school students, is reading graphs, right? Understanding what's on the x-axis and understanding what's on the y-axis, and how do those two things come together to give us information. And so this could be a great resource for that. I've included the link for that. And I also found these graphs on a shorter paper, really, that talks about the different preferences in terms of vegetation for different livestock types during the year. So you'll see the different seasons on the left, and that can also work as a resource. The cool thing about this is that it has so many different types of livestock, right? It has cattle, sheep, goats, but it also includes bison, deer, and mule deer, white-tailed deer and mule deer. And so that's definitely a resource for the activity that I'm talking about. And this is the historic part. So I wanted to include this as well, just in case there was any interest. But it's really cool to see, you know, the type of livestock that was around during the 1800s. And this can also work as a source for the variables that you can play with. Okay, well, you are a rancher in 1819 and you're located in Oklahoma. Okay, well, what type of livestock is going to come and feed off of X and Y type of vegetation, right? And so that will be bison, or, you know, elk, or antelope. And so linking that with some of the text that was available for that graph as well, just kind of providing some of those sources of information. I also provided a very simple PowerPoint. This one is definitely not as developed as the first one that I showed you, but these are resources, you know, the pictures and the graphs that we were just talking about, with their source, where I got them from. There are some cool pictures of multi-species grazing that you can use for your lesson planning. Here is one too, and there are some cool videos also. So I wanted to also include that in there because I thought, you know, videos are always so great to explain this type of concepts to students. And the third part of these resources that I've put together have to do with tribal nations and prescribed fire. And so came across this beautiful website where they talk about fire and culture and how does that present in specific areas, specific geographies. This website has all sorts of information that you can use. And if I go to the main page, you will see that, and I want to go over this very quickly so that you see what kind of resources and what kind of information and materials are available in this page, which is just incredible. They have a coyote's story about fire, and there is somebody actually telling the story and explaining it. I will say that it is recommended that this story is told during winter when there's still snow on the ground. So just trying to honor that tradition. There are some interviews from elders and also from fire managers. And so there can be a lot of connections there. I believe there are some prompts that they use to interview some of these individuals. So, you know, you can also use this as a way to work with qualitative data, maybe analyzing some of the text, you know, that a great resource for that too. Pictures and, you know, more information on fire ecology, history, and what's going on today. And what I used for the type of material that I'm providing is this historical part. more specifically this traditional culture. And so looking at each one of these pieces independently, you can talk about this type of record, right? The record kept on trees and the tree rings, that's something else that can be part of it. But definitely a great and beautiful resource to explore. So I put together a guide or a lesson plan. It doesn't have all the details and all of the particularities of connecting it with the objectives and other things related to educational standards, but again, this can be shaped however you need to. I have the link to the website there, and this is more of exploratory using the internet. So this is not necessarily connected with the other two activities that I talked about. It has the fire component in there, but I really wanted to include a piece that connected to cultural aspects, more, in this case is Native American tradition, but there's probably a lot more information about other ethnic groups and how they think about fire. So going through, like I said, exploration of the website, it gives you an idea as to how long it should take per activity. There's going to be a lot of discussion, of course, of what they learned. So yeah, interactive activities, discussions, what kind of prompts you could use for this type of activity. And I also provided a list of questions that you could use for sparking conversation, right? You could maybe have groups of students come together to answer one or two questions of this, and then come together as a group later when the class is ending to talk about this. I really thought that story about the Beaver Steels fire, it's beautiful. There's lots of drawings. They talk about the artist, and so it's a really nice way to maybe engage younger students, although I can see myself enjoying it when I was in high school too. I also put together a PowerPoint presentation for that lesson plan. Again, this is not set in stone. I try to, pull out some of the pictures from the website to showcase, different concepts here. Some of these bullet points are the key points that are suggested for talking about these topics. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that this is helpful to you if you wanted to include culture in these conversations about fire. I think that is important. Yeah, and so there's a concluding element, discussion and reflection elements, and that's really what is included in this PowerPoint. So I'm hoping that either all of those or one of those or a combination of those will be helpful in your classrooms. I have personally implemented the runoff experiment myself, and it goes really well. Students are, it's very interesting to be in a lab setting, like I was in a lab setting and working with soil, right? When you're used to being in a space like that where everything has to be cleaned and so it's interesting to have those type of dynamics going on in a space like that. I hope this helps. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm sure the coordinators and everybody else who's part of this team has my information. And good luck. Bye.